The only sound in the room was that of fingers on keys. Clackety clack. Yua Kusunoki's thin, slender fingers were dancing on the keyboard. Her gaze was locked on the monitor. She was typing without looking at the keyboard, with barely any spelling errors. She was writing an email. A long one, too. She'd spent 30 minutes already thinking about what to write, and then going back and changing it. Suddenly, her fingers stopped. She let out a sad sigh and suddenly pressed down hard on the backspace key. The cursor on the screen began to scroll quickly toward the left. Everything she'd written had vanished in a flash as it went. I know that feeling. When it was all gone, Yua brought her Garo Froggy plush over from her bed and gave it a tight squeeze. It was a habit of hers lately. She wasn't holding something tightly, the fear would overtake her. She pressed her head down into the stuffed animal and sighed a little. She whispered to no one in particular, then pursed her lips. She put the stuffed animal on her lap and put her hands back on the keyboard. Letters began to appear on the screen once more, one by one, as her slender fingers typed. The message was, compared to the one she'd just deleted, simple and short. When she was done, she hesitated a moment before finally clicking send. Is that getting picked up? Oh my god, it totally is. Oh, that's awkward. When she was done, she hesitated a moment before finally clicking send. The email was sent on its way before she had a chance to change her mind. She held the Garo Froggy on her lap tightly and stared at the monitor for over an hour. She hadn't expected an answer, of course, but there was no sign that one was coming. Room 37 was the same as always. I sunk down into the reclining seat and bit my nails in an attempt to calm my irritation. There was a reason I'd come to At Cafe 2 days in a row, both yesterday and again today. That night, 2 days ago, after I'd found out from Grimm that Senna's story was true, I'd gotten an email from Yua. It was, ridiculously enough, a request to talk to me again. Screw you, was what I wanted to say to her. Why would I want to talk to you after you lied to me? I don't have anything to talk to you about anyway. Obviously, this is just part of some new trap. I'm not gonna waste my time talking to you. Sure, I wasn't used to talking to girls. That's why I'd gotten so excited when Yua tried to be friendly with me. But behind my back, she thought I was an idiot. And then there was that weird delusion of hers. Sure, I had delusions myself, but I didn't bother other people with them. But her, that crazy bitch, had practically called me the new-gen killer. I'd never forgive her. I decided to just ignore it, but there was one problem. The email said she'd come visit the base. She knew where it was, so if she wanted to, she could. That's why I'd come here, to Hat Cafe, even though it wasn't a school day. I wanted to take the D-Sword with me for protection, but unlike Senna, I lacked the courage to carry that thing through Center Street. Spending almost half a day in a net cafe was kind of exhausting, though. The reclining seat was comfy, and there was even a shower in the place, but it wasn't as relaxing as the base. And the biggest problem of all was that Saraton wasn't here. After 2 days holed up at cafe, I come to realize how much she meant to me. She's his wife, after all, you know. I wanted to go home now, but I decided I'd stay here until midnight at least. By then, the trains would stop running, and even Yua wouldn't be able to stay out that late. It would be another 4 hours until midnight. If I played some ESO, the time would fly, but... I looked over at the monitor. My second character, Lizalot, was just standing there, doing nothing. So much happening! And yet... not... I remembered what Senna said. Over half of what she told me was true. The one thing I hadn't been able to find a source for was that stuff controlling stuff controlling people's will or their bodies. Maybe that part was just Senna's delusion? Mixing in a little lie with the truth was something that blackmailers and other people who wanted to make threats often did, because it worked. It's true. I knew that, at least in my head, but after all the strange things that had happened to me over the past few weeks, I still couldn't help but feel scared. I stared at Liz a lot on the screen. I whispered so that nobody around me could hear. I'd thought about something similar a bunch of times. Basilard, Lizelot's world, the world where I was looking at right now, was real to her, but to me it was fake. Which meant that the person controlling me was seeing my world, and it was fake too. But just as Lizelot couldn't see her controller because he was in a higher dimension, I couldn't see the person controlling me either. Did Lizelot ever think about things like this? She couldn't even move unless I told her to. So, what about me? Could I even get out of this reclining seat if the person controlling me didn't want me to? I tried to stand up, just to see if I could. I succeeded easily. Then I tried sitting down. I did it without difficulty. Was what I just did done of my own will? Oh man, this is getting deep, kind of. Or was the person controlling me telling me what to do? I didn't have any way to tell. I believe that's what people call an unfalsifiable claim. No way to prove it. Or disprove it. I heard the sound of the door to my booth opening. I sensed somebody come in. I turned around. Oh god. Oh god! It was Yua Kusunoki. I was so scared that I tried to scream. Oh, she's got the angry eyebrows. Oh god. I thought that one face she made where she was smiling was scary. That's a scary face. But Yua put her hand on my mouth. Oh, straight up assault. Let's go. Alright. Her hand was warm, and the scent of her sweat hit my nostrils. Oh god, his... Work. I mean, he can't tell you anything if you covered his mouth, dingus. Oh my god. I forgot she does that, where she's just like, say it, say it. You'll say it, won't you? Say it now. What? Stop. The booth was tiny. Yua blocked the only exit. Alright, green or red? I'm gonna go red. I don't know. Feels appropriate. This is already a bad situation. Why not make it worse? The next thing I knew, she'd pinned my shoulders with incredible strength. I couldn't get up from the seat. Her cold gaze pierced me from point-blank range. I looked away, unable to bear her gaze, and saw the 3 Garo froggies on her shoulder bag. Her hand slowly moved away. I tried to shout, but she put her hand over my mouth again. I couldn't breathe. Lady, you crazy! Lady... What are you talking about? That doesn't even make sense! She's not even making sense at this point. She's just... I couldn't believe the strength in her grip. She was pressing on my jaw with incredible strength. My fear reached its peak, and my knees started to buckle. All I could do was nod desperately as she spoke to me in her cold voice. She finally weakened her grip, but she didn't let go like she'd done a moment ago. Shit, she was a real stalker. How had she found me here? No, it wasn't that hard to figure out. The first day I'd met her, I'd seen her too. She was watching me from room 36. Trying to hide here was hopeless. How could I have been so stupid? She whispered softly enough that nobody around us could hear. Her voice was weak and powerless again. It was like she had two personalities. This woman was crazy. Okay, so yes, it is. She has the thing, and then I think she also thinks he has the thing, which at this point he might. I don't know.
でも、西条くんとお話しするにはこうするしかなかったんです。
She looked so apologetic that she actually made me feel a little guilty. She was one hell of an actress.
昨日、あなたの家に行ったんですけど、いませんでしたよね。夜まで待ってたんですけど。でも、私を避けようとする西条くんの気持ちはよくわかります。私、西条くんのこと騙してたわけだし。
If you know that, then just leave me alone. Then just... What? If you know that, then just leave me alone. Then just leave me alone. I had nothing to say to one of Shogun's servants, particularly the sort of awful person who tried to trick and trap someone as helpless as me.
でも、お願いです。一つだけ言わせてください。これ以上、あなたが傷つくのも、あなたが不幸になるのも、あなたのせいで不幸になる人が出るのも見たくないんです。
What was she talking about? She was making it sound like she knew everything about me. She hadn't even spent a full day with me. What could she possibly understand? Was this another of her crazy delusions? I started to flail my limbs about in fear. But Yua wouldn't let go. She might kill me at this rate. Sorry. I had to flail my limbs in fear. Had Shogun given up on trying to trap me and sent Yua as an assassin instead, I think I actually pulled my shoulder. That really was not a good idea. I don't know why I did that. Ow! Ow! I don't want to die. I don't want to die! I don't want to die!
ごめんなさい。お願いだから静かにしてください。話はすぐ終わりますから。
Her voice was shaking, but her hands were so strong and holding me so tightly that I couldn't even move. I couldn't believe her tiny hands could have so much power.
西条くん。
She got closer. I desperately looked away.
もう。
Suddenly I realized her hands were shaking. Or was my shaking just being transferred into her hands? Then she said something I couldn't believe.
人を殺すのはやめてください。
It's not him! Actually, it might be Shogun. I don't know. I don't know. Like, that's... I don't know at this point. I don't think it's him or Shogun. I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't think either of them are the killer.
自覚がないんですね。でもそれも私には理解できます。西条くんに自覚があるはずないから。あなたは。
There was a sadness in her eyes. She'd been staring straight at me, but suddenly her gaze turned downward.
DID 多重人格なんです。
I had multiple personalities?
最初はあなたのこと警察に突き出すつもりでした。
She kept talking despite my confusion.
それが無理ならこの手でとも思ってました。だけどあなたのこと調べていくうちにあなたも苦しんでるんだって分かって。
Her eyes were looking into mine again. They were pleading with me. And the way it seemed like she was really worried about me. It made me shiver.
私あなたを助けたい。
Her delusions were getting out of control. Nothing she said made any sense. Wait, really? Did it really not make sense?
だから病院に行きましょう。
I didn't understand myself. I'd used the nickname Shogun in a chat without even knowing it. I was friends with a girl named Rimi without having any memories of her. Maybe I wasn't sleepwalking. Although, now that I think about it, if it was Shogun, if Shogun was the guy, then it would, her being there at the crucified thing would make a little more sense, and being like relieved that to see him, she thought it was the other guy. I don't know. I need to stop trying to. I'm not smart. My brain's not big enough to theorize for this. I need to just go along with the ride. Just take me away. Maybe there wasn't some being from a higher dimension controlling me. Maybe the person controlling me was in fact inside my mind the whole time. A me who wasn't me. Another personality who wasn't me. Multiple personalities. My head ached. There was a painful stinging in my temples. This was impossible. It couldn't be true. I could fly if I wanted to. No. I wasn't going to believe it. It was just a delusion of Yua's. She was my enemy. She was getting in my way. She was trying to trap me. She was trying to destroy my mind. And the hospital was under Shogun's influence too. The one person I could trust, Dr. Takashina, had disappeared so suddenly that I knew something must have happened to him. Shogun must have killed him. And if I did what Yua said, I'd be killed too. There was no way I was going to believe this woman. I don't believe her. 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 My brain shut down. I pushed her as hard as I could. My brain's also shutting down. She fell back into the wooden partition door and collapsed to the ground in pain. Finally free from her grip, I grabbed my bag and stepped over her into the corridor. She grabbed my ankle, still crouched in the ground. Oh, makes a slapping sound. Her hair was a mess, and her glasses had slid down onto her nose. She was clinging to me as hard as she could. I was so scared. I let out a miserable scream. Was that my phone? That was my phone. I thought I muted that. I'm so good at this. Stop. I'm so good at this. She was my enemy. She was working with Shogun. I wouldn't let her fool me. I wouldn't let her fool me again. I screamed, and she let go. I ran while I had the chance. I slammed down a 5,000 yen bill. A 5,000 yen from my wallet onto the counter in front of the astonished clerk. Then I ran into the elevator outside without even waiting for my change. When I hit the ground floor, I dashed outside. The sun had already set. I looked around. There were so many people around. Run. I just had to run. It was too dangerous to go back to the base. She'd follow me there. I started to run, without even knowing where I should go. The thought of Yua coming out of the other elevator any second now and threatening me with her cold voice made me feel like I needed to get out of there as soon as possible. I ran and ran, stopping again and again to look behind me. The other pedestrians kept getting in my way. I slammed into salarymen and Dokyun-looking high school girls. Each time they'd curse at me. But I ignored them and kept running. It hurt to breathe. I'd chosen my path randomly, so I didn't even know where I was. I stopped to catch my breath, then I looked around at my surroundings. I was in front of the Maruichi building. I was close enough to Miyashita Park that I could escape there. I'd rest a little and then keep running. If I could get to Yoyogi Park, there'd be any number of places to hide. Maybe I could spend the night there. I couldn't stop worrying about whether or not Yua was following me. I couldn't see her anywhere. But she might show up at any second, with that placid, emotionless face of hers. My instincts drove me forward. Run, run! Run, squirrel. When I made it to the bridge at Miyashita Park, I flopped right down on the ground. I'd run so much that my throat was parched. I wanted an ice-cold soda. But I didn't see any vending machines nearby. Maybe I'd run enough that I was safe now. No, I couldn't be sure. I kept a careful eye on my surroundings. I assumed Miyashita Park would be pretty empty at night, but that didn't seem to be the case. I saw a salaryman walking quickly through the park, taking a shortcut on his way home, and an older man sitting on a bench playing with his cell phone. A group of homeless men were sitting together, and a man in blue was talking to them, a policeman. Let's go red again. I don't know, I'm in a red mood today. I gulped. Those two policemen had talked to me before, hadn't they? I hadn't heard anything from them. They said they'd send someone to watch the area around the base, but nothing had come of it. Misumi had said they'd come to school, though. What were their names again? I couldn't remember. I told them exactly what I'd seen during the crucified incident, but looking back, something in their expressions had made it clear they were pretty suspicious. Suddenly, the police officer standing by the homeless men looked over at me, or at least it felt like he did. No way. Phew. Terrible thoughts came to me. I stood up and looked around once more. The man on the bench with the phone was glancing at me, or so it seemed. Just now, a tough-looking man had come into the park and leaned up against a fragile-looking pipe fence, then spread out a paper to read. Here, in a dark place with almost no streetlights. The salaryman who'd been walking so quickly through the park was now on the edge of the bridge, staring down at— I accidentally skipped that— at the street below. The officer who'd been talking to the homeless people was now looking at me and speaking into his radio. A cold sweat began to drip down my back. Also, I can't help but notice it didn't do the whooshy thing again. I remember when these used to be all fake and stuff. Just fun little... Now it's all real. Maybe they were all detectives? Maybe they were tailing me? If so, I was completely surrounded. You had decided that I was the killer. What if she'd taken her delusions to the police? I whispered, soft enough that nobody could hear me. Was this part of Shogun's plot? I didn't do it. I didn't kill anybody. It wasn't me. How come a wimp like me was being chased by the police as a murderer? Why did I have to get caught up in Yua's megalomania? I had to get out of here. My heart was still beating fast and unsteadily, but I had to run. I walked over the bridge, trying to look as natural as possible. In front of me was the bridge heading to Meiji Street. I'd go down it and then escape onto Meiji Street. When I got to the middle of the bridge, someone new appeared on the far side of it. It was a woman in a business suit. She had a phone up to her ear, and she was walking up the stairs with a blank look on her face. Was she a detective too? My heart was racing as I passed by her. Of course!
っていう T シャツが流行ってるわよ。今度の日曜日に買いに行くわ。原宿の竹下通りに売っているから。
Something felt wrong. The way she spoke was strange and awkward. It sounded like she was an actor putting on a performance. Who was she talking to on the phone? Was she talking to anybody at all? But in the end, she didn't do anything as I passed by. I made it safely to the stairs, then I looked back at the park. The police officer wasn't following me. He was still standing in the same spot, saying something into his radio. One of the homeless people was just standing up. The others didn't move. The man on the bench and the man with the paper had both stood up and were walking toward me. They both gave each other a glance. They were signaling to each other, at least that's what it looked like. I looked at the woman again. We just passed each other, but now she'd turned to look toward me. When our eyes met, she seemed startled and looked away. Her phone was still at her ear, but she wasn't talking. I ran down the stairs, overcome by an indescribable fear. As I headed down Meiji Street and toward the station, I looked up at the bridge. The woman was leaning over the railing and pointing at me. The two men were running across the bridge. They were detectives after all. They were all with the police. Shit. It was Yua's fault. She'd set me up. Should I proclaim my innocence? But right now, I was running from the police. They were probably just going to try and frame me anyway. They wouldn't believe a creepy otaku like me. I didn't have time to think about what would happen next. For now, I just needed to get away from Yua and the police. That one desire was the only thing driving me. I ran through the underpass and up the stairs of the pedestrian bridge. People kept getting in my way and blocking me. I started to wonder if they were doing it deliberately. Everybody started looking like a detective. I was on the verge of panic. I looked back and saw somebody chasing me. I got a glimpse of them moving through the crowds just like I was. It was one of the people I'd seen at the park. I couldn't tell which. But they were chasing me. I shuddered. If they caught me here, my life was over. I'd be given the death penalty for a crime I didn't commit and put in jail for decades. I'd endure a living hell for years, and then they say, okay, it's time for you to die. Is that, I think, I guess that's how it works. Please, no, I couldn't handle that. I didn't want that to be my life. Even if I was found innocent in the end, once you were branded a criminal, that didn't disappear. Nobody would ever trust me again. Please, no, I didn't do anything. I ducked into a small side alley and kept running as fast as I could. But since I'd been running ever since I left At Cafe, I quickly ran out of breath. My lungs were desperate for oxygen. My legs could barely move from exhaustion. I regretted not exercising more, but it was far too late for that now. Finally, I stopped, leaning forward with my hands on my knees and panting. I couldn't run anymore. I was in a place I recognized. The distinctive red brick exterior, the big lit-up sign reading Gigantes. I'd come here once with Misumi. Back then, I'd come to see Phantasm's concert. More specifically, its lead singer, Fess. Speaking of, where's she at? She's so cool. I have to say that every time, because she's just so cool. Now it was quiet and seemingly empty. Only the feeble light of a single vending machine illuminated the front of the building. I glanced back at the path I'd come from, annoyed that my breathing wasn't going back to normal. It was a dark and narrow alley. The Tokyo Line's train passed right above me, the light streaming from the car windows shining bright against the night, but even that light failed to reach the darkness just beneath it. I squinted into the night. Had I ditched the police in Yua? It was too dark to see. I wasn't expecting that. That, yes. I heard a voice right next to my ear, and let out a pathetic scream as I fell back. Sorry. It was Fess. She was dressed in the elaborate outfit she wore for her concerts. As she quietly stood above me in the darkness, there was a sense of fragility about her that hadn't been there when I saw her on the stage. It was too dark to guess at the look on her face. As I sat there, too shocked to move, Fess offered me a hand. Her voice was calm, but there was power in it. She slowly turned her head, her hand still stretched out to me, as if to see whatever was beyond the darkness. How? Did she know I was being chased by you and the police? For a moment, I was cautious, but right now I had no choice but to trust her. I grabbed it and clung tightly. Her hand was cold. As I stood, she started to run. I was angry because of how exhausted I was, but if it weren't for Fess, I might have stayed there until the police caught me. I wanted some water, but I knew there wasn't time. Fess kept pulling me onward. We went down narrow alleys, turning at one intersection after another. I no longer had any idea where I was going. I barely knew the layout of Shibuya anyway. At this point, I'd just have to keep following Fess. Part of me thought for a minute that this might be a trap of Shogun's, but I brushed the thought away. Even if Fess was working for Shogun, there was nothing I could do at this point. My leg muscles were filled with lactic acid, and all the running must have kept my brain from getting enough oxygen, because I felt like I was on the verge of passing out. I had to stop myself from telling Fess that I couldn't run anymore. Actually, I might have said it a bunch of times without realizing it. But Fess just kept running, even without looking back at me once. The next thing I knew, we were on a path directly beneath the highway. We were close to Shibuya Station, but there weren't many people here at all. Fess headed down a stairwell that led into the darkness. It felt like she knew exactly where she was going. When we got to the very bottom, she finally stopped. I let go of her hand and grabbed onto the stairwell's handrail, panting for breath. How much running had I done today? I wasn't sure if I'd ever exercised so much in my life. She's tired too. For a while, the only sounds in the dark, gloomy underground corridor were the sounds of our breathing. I looked up at the stairwell's entrance. Nobody had followed us. Had we gotten away? That said, I'd never seen this little underground corridor before. It was close to the station, but there was nobody there. One of the lights illuminating the tunnel was on the verge of burning out, and was constantly flashing on and off. There was a faint smell of rotting garbage. The place seemed to symbolize the underground side of Shibuya. If somebody attacked you here, you could scream, but nobody would notice. It wasn't a place I'd want to come alone. Alright, I'll go green. Had enough red for one day. Still panting for breath, I looked over at Fess. This was the underground indie singer who was beloved by the youth of Shibuya, the one they even called a prophet. And here she was, with a creepy otaku like me. It felt kind of weird. Beads of sweat had formed on her forehead, running in rivulets? I've never seen that word before. Rivulets down her face. She was wiping them away with the back of her hand. I could see part of her bare chest inside her open jacket, peeking out above the camisole she wore. This is appropriate. It was heaving up and down with each breath she took. Eyes up here, buddy. For all that her languid demeanor. What? For all that her languid demeanor, there was something about her body that felt sexy and alive. I don't understand that first part of the sentence. Grammatically, I don't understand it. It wasn't really moe. It was sexy, probably was the best word for it. Her camisole with the cross design was just incredible. There was no way she was wearing a bra under. Jesus Christ. Buddy! Yeah, I bet she wasn't wearing a bra at all. What kind of underwear did Fess usually wear? This kid needs to get his priorities straight. It's probably sexy stuff. Black and red, maybe. But personally, I'd rather she wore something nice, like white, with a good girl vibe to it. Wait, why was I thinking about this now?
追われてたわね。警察。
I nodded. It wasn't just the police, but Yua too. But I was too tired to explain that.
私も同じ。
Oh snap. Huh? What did that mean?
私が書いた歌詞となんとかって呼ばれてる事件との関係について。だってしつこく聞かれたわ。
New Gen. Fess's lyrics matched every one of the cases. That's why her believers all said the same thing, that she was a prophet.
私疑われてるみたい。
As the New Gen killer, huh? I had too when I'd learned about her lyrics the first time. I'd actually thought that she might be Shogun. But since she saved me, that actually might not be true. What was Fess doing there, though? It was just blind luck that she'd been there to save me, right? It was right in front of the concert hall, so maybe she had a concert today?
君が追われてるのはなぜ？何か悪いことでもしたの？
作られた。あの女、僕のこと作ったんだ。ニュージェネの犯人にされる。
You had tried to get me arrested. Damn it. She and Shogun were on the verge of destroying my life.
そう。容疑者候補ね。私たち。
I think is that the first time we've seen her smile? Like, straight up? How could she be laughing?
僕は無実だ。
I got so excited I yelled. My voice echoed loudly throughout the tunnel, but I couldn't control myself anymore.
事件を目撃しただけだ。証拠品を勝手に持ち帰っちゃったけど、それだけ。僕殺してない。
それなら。
Bess's voice regained its calmness.
きっとそれは導きなのよ。大いなる存在による。
Another Another crazy chick? Another lunatic?
事実だったか幻だったかは些細なこと。
That's really funny. Oh, that's great. That terrible, awful scene was an illusion? Was that possible? It was so real. I mean, the fact that the detectives were like, yeah, there was no blood at the crime scene, and maybe there was no blood at the crime scene. Maybe that was, the version he saw was just an illusion.
君が今抱い
I would explain that little
苦し
contradiction.
みや怒りは必要なものだったということよ。
What is she talking about? I was disappointed. I'd kind of realized she was crazy when I'd seen her at the concert, but I hadn't realized it was this bad. They say there's a fine line between genius and crazy, but...
だから早く見つけて。
Yeah, can we talk about the whole sword thing? I feel like so far we've encountered 3 characters with swords. One of them refuses to give a straight goddamn answer. The other one, I think technically had a sword, but she didn't really say anything. She's quiet and doesn't talk much. And then you are pretty crazy, I guess, but yeah, let's talk about the sword now that we have this opportunity.
剣を見つけて。
There it is. But can you elaborate, please? I gasped. That's what she'd said at school before. Find it and you'll be saved. That's what she'd said before. The police were scary, but Shogun and his servants were even scarier. I didn't know why, but they were clearly trying to trap me. And if I was going to save myself from them, if I was going to protect myself, I needed...
理想度。
そうよ。
Fess's lips curled into a smile.
勉強したみたいね。
それなら手に入れた。僕は理想度も持ってる。今家に。
I don't think it's a real one, my dude.
知ってるわ。
Oh, maybe not. You know? How do you know?
見たから。君が渋谷のど真ん中を歩いていたのを。大きなおもちゃを抱きしめて恥ずかしそうにしてたわね。
Yeah. She was talking about the day I bought the D sword. Ugh, I can't believe she'd seen me. No, hang on. What did Fess just said?
おもちゃ。
The smile was gone from her face. She glanced at me for a moment and then sighed. The air of ennui about her was strong, and I was starting to get nervous.
偽物だと思うわ。あなたの買った剣は。
I wasn't that surprised. It was exactly what I expected to hear, actually. Compared to the sword that Senna had, mine looked incredibly cheap, and it didn't glow either. And anyway, Fess had told me that this was the sword that was going to save my life. The idea that it was on sale for 10,000 yen next to a bunch of sex toys was just too lame to be real. It's very true. Imagine if Excalibur was on, like, they were selling it in, like, Adam and Eve or something. Like, Jesus Christ. So I wasn't that surprised. Instead, I felt violently angry. Angry at the gloomy-looking shop clerk who tricked me. Angry at myself for being stupid enough to fall for it. Angry at Fess for saying all these important-sounding things without actually telling me anything useful.
じゃあ。
I stood up and stormed over to Fess. Normally, I'd never be able to do something like that, but right now I was desperate. My encounters with you and the police had scared me to death. And not only that, I've been through absolute hell in the past month or so. I was sick of it. If I was gonna go back to my normal life, I needed that sword.
教えてよ。理想度はどうやって手に入れるのか。
The look on Fess's face became very serious as she turned toward me.
見て。
She held out her right palm for me to see. Then she motioned for me to stop getting closer as she made a fist. Then she flung her arm back, and with a sound like breaking glass, the empty air cracked and shattered. My eyes went wide in shock. Fess stared at me, her expression unchanging. Beyond the cracks in space, I could see a deep darkness. Fess stuck her hand in between the cracks and pulled hard. That's pretty sick, I'm not gonna lie. That's pretty sick. That's pretty sick. And... it's that easy, kids! The crack in space was repaired almost instantly. It disappeared, as if it had never been there. The whole thing took only a few seconds. Was that a magic trick, or just a delusion I'd seen? I couldn't believe what had just happened in front of me, my very eyes. It didn't feel real. This was something out of a fantasy, or an anime. The sword was the one that Fess was waving around during her concert. The one I'd thought was a mic stand. It was shaped like one of those battleships you see in every sci-fi anime. Battleship? I don't see it. I don't see a battleship. I don't see it. There wasn't a single straight edge on the whole thing. But it was sharp. He says that, and I see that as a challenge. I'm looking for, there's got to be at least one. Wow. No, there. I mean, no, it's all curves. Wow, he's not even kidding. Beautiful and terrible. It felt like touching it. It felt like touching it would cut your fingers clean off. I couldn't look away. My eyes were locked on Fess's D-sword. I couldn't help but ask. Another space? This whole thing was turning into an anime. Delusion? Did that mean that the D-sword was a product of Fess's delusions? The impossible scene I just witnessed was a delusion? It didn't exist in reality? If Fess's sword was a delusion, how could I see it? I was confused at Fess's sudden demand, but obeyed. Behind me was the stairs, and also... What? What? Fess, wearing nothing but white underwear. What? What? What is this? Fess was beside me, and Fess was in front of the stairs. There were two of the same person in the same place. One of them was in her underwear, too. Coincidentally enough, the underwear you were hoping she was wearing. I'm sure that's not relevant at all. Shocked, I looked back and forth from one to the other. Their face, build, hair, everything was exactly the same. The only difference was their clothes and whether or not they were holding a sword. They weren't twins or anything like that. They didn't just look alike. They were exactly the same. I'd seen lots of girls in their underwear in H games, but this was totally different. I'd seen Nanami in her underwear when she was little too, so this shouldn't have an effect on me. I mean, that's very different. Okay. But it did. Fess was standing here in this filthy tunnel in her underwear. Odd. It was such an unbelievable situation that my head was spinning. I knew I shouldn't look, but I kept glancing at it anyway. It took a lot of effort to look down so I couldn't see. I found myself apologizing. This was just what I'd been imagining in my delusions a few minutes ago. I'd been thinking about Fess in white underwear. Hold on, if I had picked the red, would he have been thinking about something else and then a different thing would appear here? That, I'm curious about that now. Like if I had gone the red route, because I think he was fantasizing about the underwear because I picked the green route, or green screen, green circle thing. Yeah, that. Both of them spoke the same words at the same time. I gulped. My face was turning red with incredible speed. I had to come up with an excuse. I had to come up with some kind of lie. If a 3D girl labeled you a pervert, you were finished. You'd be banished from society. Wait, no. That was important, but more importantly, what the hell was going on here? That was odd. So many. Just leave that hanging, I guess. All right, back to Dick Gumshoe. Yasuji Ban was walking through a narrow, filthy alleyway in Maruyumocho. He jammed a hand in his pocket. He checked, making sure there were a dozen or so coins inside.
先輩、貼り付けの現場に何があるって言うんすか？もう事件から2週間以上経ってるし、散々調べられた後っすよ。新しい証拠なんて出てきませんって。
His detective partner Sua, no, his partner Detective Sua was walking behind him and complaining in an irritated voice. It was only natural that Sua would be upset. Yeah, he looks absolutely frustrated. Yeah, no. The job they'd been given was to tail Takumi Nishijo, a person of interest in the new gen murder cases. But right now, they were ignoring that job and coming to visit the scene of the third new gen case, Crucified. Ban had left the job of tailing Takumi Nishijo to some of the local cops, without bothering to tell the rest of the force he'd done so. I mean, honestly, that's probably the better move. Why would they be the ones in charge of tailing him, considering he's encountered them before? They'd be the worst people to tail him. From the perspective of a rookie like Sua, this was reckless and crazy.
やっぱまずいっすよ。尾行に戻りましょう。
Ban had dragged him out here without any explanation. Of course he was upset. So, he'd been trying to persuade Ban to turn back for a while now, but... How do you argue with that? Ban completely ignored the rookie's protests and didn't seem the slightest bit concerned. Before long, they reached a narrow road blocked off by a yellow tape. As Sua sighed again, seemingly for the 100th time that day, his phone buzzed. He took it out, the look on his face quickly returning to that of a young, capable detective before he pressed the button to answer.
すわっす。はい。はい。
Ban stopped in front of the tape as he listened to Sua talking behind him. Past the tape was the crime scene. The place was dark, just like it had been during the time of the crime. Except for the tape, there was nothing to indicate that anything had ever happened.
見失った？女か。やられたっすね。とりあえず、深センの家に戻ってほしいっす。はい。張り込んでてください。
Uh-oh. Staking out the
いやいや、大
base.
丈夫っすよ。責任はバン警部補が取るっすから。
Ban chuckled a little when he heard that. Sua was cleverer than he looked. Of course, Ban had no intention of letting Sua or the locals take the fall for him.
なるべく早くこっちも合流します。本当申し訳ないっす。お願いします。
Sua hung up the phone and glared at him for just about the same time as Ban ducked under the tape. Sua followed reluctantly.
見失ったって？
尾行に気づかれたっす。
Yeah, they really weren't that subtle about it, to be completely honest.
直前にネットカフェで人騒動
I mean, sure, he
あったみ
was
たい
pretty
ですし
paranoid, so that probably didn't help. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. So that's what I hear.
女っての？
岸本綾瀬っす。
お騒がせバンドの嬢ちゃんかな。つながりは？
同じ学校の同じ学年っすね。他は今のところ特に。クラスメートでもないっす。
Ban ran his hand through his stubble, enjoying the sensation for just a moment. Then he took out the coins from his pocket and began to count them in the darkness. Suo watched his partner's strange behavior, his mouth hanging open, making that weird, like, half happy, half sad face.
よりによって5円玉だけありゃしねえ。そうだ、お前5円玉持ってねえか。
はあ。
Sue handed the 5 yen coin over with a confused look on his face. But instead of taking it, for some reason, Bon ripped off the bottom button of his dress shirt. Then he began to unravel the string wrapped around it.
先輩、ついに頭おかしくなったんすか？
Did he snap? What's happening?
生意気な口聞くようになったじゃねえか。
Bon chuckled and lightly punched him on the forehead. Then he took the 5 yen coin and ran the string through the hole in the middle.
よし、お前にやらせてやるよ。
Hypnosis time? Is he gonna put us to sleep? Bon pinched both ends of the string with his fingers, hanging the 5 yen coin between them, and gave it back to his younger partner.
振り子っすか？
ああ、
Bon laughed mischievously.
こいつが事件の重要なヒントを与えてくれるかもしれねえぜ。
マジっすか？
I'm genuinely curious where this is going.
バンさん、勘弁してほしいっすよ。そのために仕事をほっぽってここまで来たんすか？
Sue sounded like he was on the verge of tears. Bon had dragged him on a lot of wild goose chases, but this was the worst of the lot.
サイキック操作とかダウジングとかその手のテレビでも見て影響を受けたんすね、先輩。
そういうお前も詳しいじゃね
いやまあ自分も見たは見たっすよ。先週のユーリ・ブライトマン。
えの。
ユーリ・ブライトマンっすよ。今話題になってるアメリカの超能力捜査官っす。
俺が見たのはそんなチャラチャラしたもんじゃねえや。どこかのお偉い大学教授が出ててだな。
でもテレビっすよね。
ちいち文句の多いやつだ。やってみりゃわかる。ほら、いいから吊るしてみろって。
Bon had seniority, so Sue had no choice but to obey. He frowned and pouted, but he did take the 5 yen coin. Then he pinched the ends of the string and let the coin move in a circle. It was too dark to see, so Bon flipped out a 100 yen lighter and struck it to give him some light.
先輩ってタバコ吸いましたっけ
？10年以上前に禁煙したよ。なんでだ？
ライター持ってたっすから。
そういうこともあろうかと用意しといたんだよ。
はは。で、これで何がわかるんす？
もっといろいろ動かしたり止めたりしてみろ。
Bon was staring at the movement of the 5 yen coin intently. He looked so serious that Sue found himself unable to complain anymore.
やっぱりな。そうは、わかるか？
何がっす
5円玉の動きだよ。さっきから少しだけ楕円を描いてるような気がしねえか。
The coin was moving slowly in a circular motion, held up by the string. Sue looked at it, a little confused.
力の入れ方とかじゃないんすかね。
お前、楕円に回るように意識してやってんのか？
いや、結構適当にくるくる
と。もっと手を動かさねえようにやってろ。
はあ。
Sue tried his hardest to make it move in a circle, but no matter how many times he tried, it kept tracing out an ellipse. An ellipse.
おかしいな。
意識的に違う形にしようとしてもできねえだろ。
Bon grinned. Sue, however, seemed unsatisfied and kept trying to spin the coin.
なあ、渋谷のどこでもこの現象が見られるわけじゃねえが、それでも 十数箇所はここみてえな場所があるらしいぜ。
確かに不思議っすね。でもだから何なんす？
Bond looked up with a satisfied smile, putting the lighter in his pocket and taking the fan out from his belt.
お前、渋谷がなんでここまで若者を引きつけるか知ってるか？
5円玉が楕円を描くからっすか？
Sua meant it as a joke, but Bond calmly waved his fan and nodded.
まあ、そういうことだ。
Why is he... What? Are you serious? Stop! I want to... No, elaborate! I mean... What? Fess began to talk about something completely different. Internally, I was relieved. I thought she'd treat me like I was a pervert, but instead, she just ignored what was happening. Is she channeling this man? What is happening?
日本、いいえ、世界を見渡してみてもこんな場所他になかなかないわ。
Did that have something to do with the D-sword? If not, I didn't care. I needed Fess to tell me how to get a real D-sword.
新宿でも池袋でもなくて渋谷、この街の名前が一人歩きしてしまうくらい。
I'm so lost. The two Fesses were speaking to me simultaneously, one in front of me and one in back. They were in perfect sync. Listening to them made me feel kind of strange. Maybe Fess had split? Maybe one of them was real and the other wasn't? Or maybe they were both fake.
日本中の人たちに刻まれている若者の街という疑問。なぜかしら。
Why? Well, I didn't care.
ファッションの街だから。お店がたくさんあるから。流行の発信者だから。
I feel like my brain is melting.
よくテレビに映るから。交通の便がいいから。違うわ、ドリ。
The two Fesses paused for a moment. I felt awkward, with a Fess watching me both in front and the back.
大いなる意志よ、公示存在。もっとわかりやすく言えば、神による意志なの。
Oh no. Could this be... Was I being recruited for some kind of weird cult? I started to panic. It's starting to feel like... I wasn't sure if I should run. When she said her next words, that ceased to be an option.
理想度もまた、その意志による導きよ。
Okay. Oh my god.
引力ってあるだろ？
Do you know what gravity is? Do you know what gravity is? I know what gravity is. Do we know what gravity is? Gravity. How do it work? Oh my god, my brain. Oh my god. Okay. I do know what gravity is. Bon, thank you. Bon headed out of the narrow street and back toward Shibuya Station. Sua had been sure they were going to Shinsen, so he looked confused as he followed.
万有引力のことっすか？
Yeah.
よく知ってるじゃねえの。さす
Gravity.
がいい大学出てるだけあるな。
Bon grinned, but Sua just looked annoyed.
あいにく大学じゃオカルトは勉強しなかったっすけどね。
オカルトじゃねえよ。世界には引力がアンバランス化してる地域ってのが何か所かある。
アンバランス化ですか？
振り子が楕円を描いたのもその影響ってこった。G レートって呼ぶらしい。
GE レート。
ああ、正式名称は何だっつってたかな。グルバケーション、グラリッション、
引力ならグラビテーションじゃないですか。グラビテーションエラーレート。
おお、そうそう、それだ。グラビテーションエラーレート。
直訳すると万有引力の異常値っすか。
物理学の辞典を調べりゃ載ってるはずだぜ。
乗ってたっすかね。
GE rate, the rate at which universal gravitation is unbalanced. Universal gravitation was a basic natural force discovered by Isaac Newton. It was a force that worked on both matter and energy. The layers of geologic strata below the Earth's surface were said to have a huge effect on it. Layers of volcanic rock beneath the Earth, for example, were known for screwing up magnetic fields. That was why, for instance, compasses wouldn't work in the Aokigahara forest at the base of Mount Fuji. A fossil layer would be another example. It would contain large amounts of iron and calcium, and research showed that these could reflect magnetism. And magnetite, especially, was known for its effect on gravity. Magnetite was a naturally occurring magnet, with octahedral crystals. If enough of it were to ever be found in a single place that would exist as geologic dike, it would be as if the surface of the Earth itself had turned into a magnet, and would likely have a slight effect on the gravity in the area. You could take the effect of these geological factors. Oh god, my big words, small brain. You could take the effect these geological factors had on the gravitational balance of an area and turn it into a number. That number was its GE rate. But by the time Bond finished his explanation, the two of them were out on one of the bigger streets in Dogenzaka. The whole area suddenly seemed much brighter.
渋谷の平均 GE レートは世界でもトップクラスらしいぜ。地面に置いたボールが一人でに坂を登っていくようなケースもあるらしい。
マジっすか？
Sua had been quietly listening until now, but his reaction was a little overdramatic.
まるで SF 映画の世界っすね。
お前の好きなな。
自分は小難しいのは嫌いっすよ。壮大なスケールの映画がいいっす。
知らねえよ。
先輩の説明はすごくもっともらしいっすけど、なかなか信じられないっすよ。GE レートなんて聞いたこともないっすし。
てめえの無知を一般論として語るな。デカに必要なのは事実を客観視することだぞ。
はあ、でも。
Sua was right. GE rates were a minor field of study, and not something you'd ever learn in typical college curriculum. Bon had only found out about them a few weeks ago.
そもそもまだ肝心の答えを聞いてないっすよ。渋谷の重力がアンバランスだとなんで若者が引きつけられるんすか？
引力と人間ってのは意外と因果関係があるってことだよ。お前、生き物のバイオリズムは月の引力に関係してるっての知ってたか？潮の満ち引きだけじゃねえんだぜ。
ウミガメの産卵には月の影響があるらしいってのはどっかで耳にしたことがあるっす。
ああ、必ず満月の夜に産卵するってやつだな。だがウミガメだけじゃねえ。他に有名なのだとサンゴが産卵するのも満月の夜だ。
ああ、海の中が雪降ってるみたいになるやつっすね。
満月の夜は引力も強くなってるって科学的に実証されてんだ。当然人間にもその影響は及んでる。
人の出産にもってことっすか？
出産だけじゃねえよ。バイオリズムって言ったろ。普通の生理現象はもちろん、交通事故や事件、病気、食欲とか性欲とかにも密接なつながりがある。 興奮すると頭に血が上ってるって言うだろう。あれは月の引力に引っ張られてるんだよ。
そりゃ極論だと思うっすよ。まるで個々の感情なんて関係なくて全部月のせいだって言ってるようなもんじゃないですか。
そこまでは言わねえがな。集団心理って言うだろう。この町に来た途端に楽しい気分になったり、ちょっと無茶したくなったりするかもしんねえんじゃねえの。ニュージェネの一連の事件に対する反応だってそうだ。この町でそのニュースを見た連中は大抵反応が同じだ。どいつもこいつも楽しんでやがる。自分だけは被害者にならないって気持ちだ。対岸の火事を眺めていい気になって。
そういう集団心理も G レートのせいってことっすか？
可能性としてはありだろう。渋谷に来たら楽しい気分になるってのが若いやつらの頭の中に無意識に刷り込まれれば、
若者がこの街に惹かれる理由になるってわけっすね。
Bond was impressed. Sue was a quick learner. He was still young, but he was good at this stuff. And what made him different from the other kids was that he didn't just blindly follow his partner's orders. If something seemed wrong or if he had questions, he'd speak up.
G レートについては一応分かったっすけど、それでどうやって犯人を探すんですか？もし G レートに影響されて今回みたいな事件が起きたってなら、何百年も前から似たようなことが起きてないと変なんじゃ。
そいつはこれから調べりゃいいさ。専門家だな。
先輩は調べないんですか？
俺はデカだぞ。
Bond grinned.
調べるのはニュージェネのことだけだ。そのために今日はわざわざ仕事サボって現場の G レートを測ったんだよ。もしこれまでの一連の現場の G レートが異常を示したなら何を意味すると思う？
まさか。
Sue's eyes went wide, and he stopped in his tracks. He seemed to have noticed what Bond was leading him toward.
事件は G レートが異常を示している場所で起こるってことっすか？だとしたら次の事件が起こる場所をある程度予測できるんすね。
まだそう決まったわけじゃねえ。それをこれから調べるんだ。
There was something in this town. Something unknown, lurking behind the glamour and lights. Maybe it was Pandora's box, which nobody should ever open. That's what but then we wouldn't have hope! Alright. That's what Bond thought as he watched people come and go down the street.
理想度もまたその意志による導き。
That was enough to make me finally snap. Fess had been continually changing the subject, talking about things that didn't matter at all. The Great Will, the reason young people came to Shibuya. I wasn't interested in those things at all. There was only one thing I wanted to know. I want a sword!
どうすれば手に入る？
Give me my S word. I worked up my courage and asked.
教えてよ。
Fess's expression of ennui stayed unchanged as she looked down at her own D-sword. It was such a huge sword, but she seemed to carry it like it weighed nothing. It occurred to me that Fess might be incredibly strong.
教えられることじゃないわ。
After all that crap she made me listen to, she wasn't going to tell me the most important thing? What the hell?
見つけなくちゃいけない。自分自身の方法なんて私には分からない。
She didn't know? So how did she get the one in her hands?
ただ理想度は力を持つ人にしか映らない。
She said it was the embodiment of sorrow or something, right? So people who didn't have the power couldn't see it? I could see it quite clearly. What did she mean by the power? Did she mean that I had superpowers too? Like the two fesses with me?
君には私の剣が見えているでしょ。それが意味するの一つだけ。
If having the power was why you and Shogun were coming after me, then I didn't even want it. But I still wanted a D-sword. Fess said that having it would save me. The Great Will, the reason young people came to Shibuya, those things didn't matter to me. I didn't need any power. I didn't want any trouble. But the sword, I needed the sword to protect me from Yua and Shogun.
感じて世界の選択した意志。
But Fess's answer was vague and hard to understand. I bit my lip, trying to figure out how to get more information out of her. But I could barely talk to 3D girls even on a good day. Trying to figure out a way to get information out of one was beyond me. I tried to think back through the H games I'd played to see if they'd give me any ideas. But neither slip her an aphrodisiac, tie her up, or lock her in a basement seemed like a good choices. Jesus Christ, dude. Yeah, good choice. Man, I just realized that I might be a piece of shit. Oh, that's really funny. I'm dying. I'm dying, I think. No, I'm alright. I'm alright. I'll survive.
君、名前は
That's really funny. Fess had turned away from me and was walking deeper into the tunnel.
私は岸本綾瀬。
Only then did I realize that we hadn't introduced ourselves to each other.
西条匠。
Fess, ISA, had her back to me, so I couldn't see the look on her face. I couldn't tell why she'd laughed.
また会いましょう。匠。
ISA got further and further away. I turned around, a little afraid to look at what the other ISA was doing. Probably standing there in her underwear. If history is any judge. And then she was gone entirely. Whether she'd literally disappeared or just walked out of the tunnel, I couldn't tell. ISA said she was a delusion. Was that the power of a D-sword? I looked back down the tunnel. There was another staircase 50 meters down the tunnel. ISA was walking up it. Before long, she was entirely gone from view. I was left alone with the silence of the eerie tunnel. I didn't have the courage to yell at her, and I was too tired and lazy to run after her. In the end, all I could do was go back home and try my best to make sure Yua and the police didn't find me. It felt like a long time since I'd been back to the base. In fact, though, I'd only been gone about 12 hours. The PC was still on, and my Saratan screensaver was smiling in the dark room. I made sure to carefully lock the door from the inside, and then threw myself on the sofa. When I closed my eyes, all the things that had happened to me today came flooding back. I couldn't believe that the cops thought I was the killer. They were totally wrong. There was no way I could kill anybody, right? Do your jobs, damn it. This isn't a game. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I bet they were just coming after me because I was a creepy otaku. Otaku who had low social status. Nobody would complain if one was made out to be the killer. They weren't making any progress finding the real killer, so they wanted to make me out to be a scapegoat. Damn it, how was I supposed to clear my name? The events at Cafe came back to me, and I shivered. There was somebody even scarier than the police out there. Yua was my enemy. I'd let my guard down because I hadn't seen her for a while. I thought she was just going to leave me alone. But today, I realized my mistake. I needed the D-sword to fight these people. I looked over at the cheap sword next to my computer. It was a fake. According to ISA, only those with power could see a real one. But Nanami had been able to see mine on the day I bought it. And unlike ISA's and Senna's, my sword didn't glow. Where was the real sword? I needed it as soon as I could get it. Otherwise, I was doomed. I was so sick of all this awful stuff that's kept happening to me.
あなたは DID 多重人格なんです。
No, that's not true. It's impossible. They say multiple personality disorder is really rare in Japan, don't they? You had just saw too many movies and read too many novels. I didn't have multiple personalities. There was no evidence anywhere. I mean, there's one evidence.
あれは違う。
But it would explain that chat log.
あんなの捏造だ。証拠にはならない。
There's no evidence that I don't have multiple personalities either.
先生。
Whoops. Oh my god! I swear! I pressed that 7 different ways somehow. I don't know how I press it. How do I press it?
先生は僕を多重人格だなんて診断しなかった。
Yeah. But then Dr. Takashina vanished right after that, for no good reason.
僕が一番よく知ってる。
But I wasn't sure who I was. Suddenly, I felt the prickling on the back of my neck. The same as always, someone's gaze watching me. Whose eyes are those?
そうだ。将軍だ。あいつが犯人だ。チャットログにもそう書いてあったじゃないか。ユアは将軍の手下だし、ニュージェネ事件だって全部将軍が。
But did Shogun even really exist? How did I know he wasn't just a delusion?
僕はまともだ。まともなんだ。そうでしょ。
I held my head in my hands and screamed out into an empty room. An answer came from...
メールだよ。ボケなす。
Sarah? I slowly walked over to my PC and opened the mail. It's from Yua. Is it from Yua? Oh, it's from Grim. The subject was, found something cool. Probably another murder. Probably some Morguro or some mental browser crash image. I didn't have the time to deal with his trolling, but I decided I'd at least read it. Oh. Found something cool. Sender, Grim. Nightheart, how come you're not in chat? You're not playing ESO either. I couldn't find you, so I had to send you an email, lol. It's a YouTube video. The video's totally nuts, you gotta see it. I know you probably think I'm just trolling you, but it's not. It's got the new gen killer in it. Everybody online's talking about it, so you gotta watch it or you'll be left out. Oh dear. A video of a new gen murder taken by the killer? Grim, you suck! My fingers were shaking on top of the mouse. I couldn't take my eyes off the text. Did it show who the killer was? Who was it? Was it me? Part of me wanted to see it, and part of me firmly resisted. This would be proof. Proof I wasn't the killer. Or maybe proof that I was. Oh, Jesus Christ. I didn't know which it would be. It was like gambling in a way. I felt my heart begin to race as I moved my mouse cursor over toward the link. But I couldn't work up the courage to click it.
私、あなたを助けたい。
Shut up. Don't treat me like I'm the killer. Don't try to have sympathy for me. I didn't do it. You're the one who's working for the killer. Anger boiling within me, I clicked on the link. Oh, wait. It opened a YouTube page. The video's window read loading.
僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない僕じゃない。
It's not him. The video only took 10 seconds to load, but to me, those 10 seconds felt like an eternity. Eventually, the loading ended and the video began to play. Oh god. It was showing someplace very dark. The background was totally black. Was it indoors somewhere, maybe? Well, no, it's on the roof of the building with the peoples. I brought my face close up to the monitor to see if I could make out any details. I mean, literally just look at the title of the video, dude, and then you'll have a better idea of what's going on here. It was dark and hard to tell, but there seemed to be several boys and girls there. They were all talking really loudly. Maybe it was the low audio bitrate of the video, or maybe it was that they were all so excited, but I couldn't make out what they were saying at all. Sometimes they would scream violently, and the static from the low-quality mic would be awful. After watching a while, I could tell that there were 5 people there, 6 if you included the cameraman. The cameraman was carefully staying out of frame. It was hard to make out the faces of the others in the darkness, too. They seemed to be cheering each other, rubbing each other's foreheads, giving out friendly pats on the back and hugs. The girls seemed to be crying with joy in loud voices, too. It was a strange scene, sure, but what did it have to do with New Gen? Look at the title of the video, my dude! Was it really the New Gen killer who was filming this? If nothing else, I didn't remember doing it. Well, that doesn't mean much anymore, unfortunately. After a short while, the person holding the camera slowly began to move forward. The 5 people in the shot, originally about 5 meters away, began to loom larger in the frame. The video's resolution was very low. Maybe they dropped the bitrate down as low as it could go during encoding to keep the file size as low as possible. Cameras these days all had night mode on them. Why wasn't the cameraman using it? Maybe it was an old camera? Suddenly, the camera panned from left to right, showing the surrounding area. What I thought was a black background was actually the night sky. This video was being filmed outside. The reason I hadn't seen any buildings was because they were on top of a skyscraper. The 5 boys and girls were standing right on the edge of a tall skyscraper. Behind them was a sheer drop. You could see the lights of Shibuya spreading out from below. Finally, I understood. I knew what this footage meant. I knew why Grimm said the New Gen killer had to have taken it. The case where 5 boys and girls had jumped off the locked roof of Cornelius Tower. The one New Gen case where they weren't sure if it was a suicide or a murder. If this video showed the 5 who died in that jump, then that would mean a 6th person was there when it happened. I'd been wrong about what they were doing. They were all crouching on the ground, clinging together and crying. I mean, yeah. They all seemed to know they were about to die, and they couldn't accept it. One was shaking their head no over and over. One was on their knees, sobbing and ripping at their hair. One was screaming at the cameraman, demanding to know why they were doing this. One had already gone crazy and was crying while they laughed. What I saw was a violent desire for life, and a powerful wish to not die. And a helpless fury at the unfair situation they were in. But what was strange was, the cameraman's voice wasn't in the video at all. The person recording the video was almost eerily calm. Jesus Christ. The video was close to a month old. Nothing I said now would change it. I knew it was meaningless, but I still couldn't help but to scream at the monitor. But of course, my words went unheard, and the person holding the camera kept walking toward the 5 of them. They began to crawl away from the camera in fear. But it didn't matter. The edge of the heliport was right behind them. There wasn't any kind of safety fence. There was nowhere to run for the 5 of them. Another step back and they'd fall. The camera slowly kept going forward, as if taunting them, oblivious to their cries. But even as it got close, whoever was holding it did nothing but move forward. Then suddenly, all 5 fell silent. They didn't make any motion toward each other, and nothing happened to cause it, but they all fell silent at the exact same moment. They stood up. The wind on top of Cornelius Tower was strong. It threatened to knock them over. If they slipped, they'd fall. And then, they all took each other's hands, as if in resignation. Their hands clasped tightly with one another's.
Yose, yamero, hayamaru na.
Yeah, they done did it. Silence. Even the sound of the blowing wind felt like it had stopped. The only thing I could hear was the sound of the cars traveling on the highway below the skyscraper. The cameramen still didn't do a thing. And then, one of the 5, ever so softly, whispered, I I froze in front of the monitor, as if a cold hand had reached into my chest and grabbed my heart.
なんでまたその言葉なんだよ。
This was the first new gen case, right? Why had this boy suddenly said, "Whose eyes are those?" That was the dying message in the fourth case, the vampire incident. This made no sense. The video continued, oblivious to my screams. The five of them slowly stepped off the edge, as if there was a path waiting for them there. Then they fell off, into the darkness of the city sky. I bit my lip and covered my eyes. That's upsetting. That was an upsetting noise. I didn't like that. Group dive wasn't a suicide. This was a murder. The killer was right there when it happened. And who was the cameraman? I knew the answer. Muffled by the strong wind on the roof, hidden by the sounds of the screaming and crying, and between the bursts of car horns from the highway below, there was another sound I could just barely hear. It was the sound of creaking metal. Oh, the wheelchair. A sound that I only heard when the cameraman moved forward. The sound of a wheelchair.
あの時、僕の前に現れたのは現実だったんだね。カメラの目線が低すぎだよ、将軍。
Well, this seems like a wonderful time to be done. Because I'm done. My brain can't handle anymore today. So many questions. Can't. It's too much. All right. I don't think I've messed anything up this time. I probably did though. I don't see it in front of my face. But yeah, I'm done. All right. Bye.